Ontario and the federal government announced today they've reached an agreement to extend Ottawa's national childcare program in the province. The program was set to expire at the end of March. The feds have set, however, a target for an average of $10 a day childcare across the country by April of next year. Will they hit that mark? I spoke with Jobs and Families Minister Patty Hajdu earlier about that. Have a listen to our conversation. Hi, Minister. Pleasure to welcome you back to studio. Appreciate you making the time. I want to start off on this childcare announcement. In particular, what I read from the press release was that it stipulates additional money to help maintain the average cost per day of $19 in Ontario. The overall program initially promised a reduction to an average of $10 a day by April of 2026. Is this a concession that won't happen?
It's a reflection that it's taking Ontario longer to get to $10 a day at the space creation target. So the agreement actually commits to additional spots and commits to stabilizing at it's an average of $19 across Ontario, still saving the average family about $10,400 a year. So it's a big savings, and the parents I spoke to today were telling me all the different ways that they can use that money in their lives, in their families, how they're pursuing their education or careers. But it's also an acknowledgement that space creation has been challenging, both from a physical space perspective, as Minister Calandra talked about today, but also from a staffing perspective. And this gives everybody a little bit of breathing room to talk about the next steps.
I have some questions actually about space creation overall nationwide, because that was another tenet of the program and the promises made. But specifically on the price, Ontario is struggling, but it's not the only province. I believe the AG said as of March of 2024, 5 provinces and 3 territories had met the target, which meant that the others have not. Will the entire country be at $10 a day daycare average of by April or not?
Well, it's hard to predict, as you know.
I mean, you promised it, though. The government promised it.
Well, we promised it together with provinces and territories. And, you know, we have inputs. We provide the funding. As you know, a large portion of that funding, provinces and territories also put money into their systems. But they control how fast those spaces can get created and how many people they can hire and how quickly. In some cases, it's a challenge about physical space. In some cases, it's having spots available without ECEs, early childhood educators, ready and able to work. So each province and territory that's struggling to reach $10 a day is facing different challenges, but we have been committed to work with them, and we will get to that goal.
When?
Again, I don't want to give you a date, because provinces and territories are all at different speeds and they all have different challenges. I think those are really appropriate questions for the ministers responsible in the provinces.
Well, I'm not trying to absolve the provinces of responsibility here, but your government in particular made this promise. You said that it would result in a certain conclusion. I'm not saying the program has been ineffective. It's been far from that, actually. It's been a very effective program.
In fact, the Auditor General found that as well.
Yes, and I would not take away from that, but execution matters as well. And it's sort of my job to hold the government to account on the promises it makes and whether they execute on them. The number of spaces the AG flagged that have been created are sitting at not even half of what was promised 3 years in. The track record thus far does not, I don't think would imbue a sense of confidence among Canadians that the rest of them will be filled out by the date that you promised. Can you be honest with Canadians tonight? Like, is there any chance of meeting the target that you set out, your government set out?
There's always a chance of meeting the target, of course. But listen, what I would say is that we rely on the provinces and territories to find the spots, create the spots, and then staff those spots. And so the money that we've committed, as you know, it's about $35 billion so far overall to this program, is a significant contribution. In fact, it's the majority of the contribution. And we have the capacity to work with provinces and territories in terms of the quantity of the investment, in terms of we have very stringent criteria and targets with provinces and territories. Just this morning, Minister Calandra was talking about the poor data that Ontario has and the improvement that he is pushing for in Ontario to be able to actually quantify what is happening in the system. So we'll be there to get to that goal, and we're going to continue to have these conversations with our counterparts.
Does there need to be more than a conversation, though? Does there need to be more accountability with the money that you are handing provinces? Like, I understand it allows the government to say, hey, this is the province's fault, but ultimately these are, many moms and dads who I know who hope to take advantage of what sounded like a great program and instead find themselves on 3-year wait lists in various provinces, not just Ontario.
That's why it was exciting to hear Minister Calandra talk today about the need for better data data in Ontario so that they can really target where the weaknesses are in their own provincial system. So today he spoke about that at length, and in fact that was part of our negotiations, was really drilling down to understand what spots have been created, what the gaps are, and what they're going to do next to actually add almost 40,000 spots in the next year. So that was a big part of the agreement today, was actually spot creation. I agree with you, families need equity, and Canadians expect that if there's a program available, they want to be able to take advantage of that too, and we will push provinces and territories, and we'll make sure that we have the right inputs to get there.
Why does it take 3 years for you to make part of negotiations with provinces, though, that they collect better data? Again, I'll go back to the Auditor General, who flagged that, you know, yes, she can identify how many spaces have and have not been created, but there is no data available for her to ascertain whether or not access is equivalent for lower income, middle income, high income. Like, there's no way to determine if the people who really needed $10 a day daycare are the ones who are benefiting from it. Again, isn't that central to execution?
Well, listen, I think we've had this challenge in a number of different spaces. I've been a minister for 10 years now and held a number of different portfolios during the pandemic. We had a really hard time getting health data out of provinces and territories in terms of who was getting sick and what hospital utilization rates were actually expressing themselves in the population. And so that data question in a federation is, I think, one of the most important. And it was very assuring today to hear Minister Calandra agree to be more diligent with his own ministry, with the Government of Ontario, to collect the data and to understand where the gaps are and where the weaknesses are in the system and what steps they're going to take to strengthen it. And in fact, you know, he talked about the federal government being fierce in its demands for this data, and that's where we're going as a country. We have to be able to be, to your point, accountable to Canadians for the programs that we announce as a collective and that Canadians are then counting on. So that's the work. We heard the Auditor General and we're taking action.
So when will you be able to tell Canadians whether or not this program is working in the way 3 years ago you promised it would, and that the people who need more affordable childcare are actually accessing it?
What I would say is that Canadians all across the country are telling us that it is working. I mean, look, a savings in Ontario of $10,400 on average per family is nothing to laugh at. I mean, these are big numbers.
I'm not laughing at it, to be clear, but you're unable to say if a low-income family is benefiting that more than a high-income family.
Well,
That's a problem.
I think this program is universal, as you would know, and so the idea behind universal access is to make sure that no matter what your circumstance, that you are not going to, as a primary caregiver, most often women, miss out on the opportunity of earnings and on career trajectory. Look, this is an economic program, and I can tell you gender economists across the country celebrated when we launched this program in the way that we did. And you know why? Because productivity in Canada is lagging, and part of the productivity challenge is that women often, who are the primary caregivers, lose that essential time of career growth, which is part of the productivity challenge. And so look, we have the most women ever in the workforce, and we have women that are using those 3 to 5 years that possibly before they wouldn't have been able to participate in their chosen career to continue to grow their careers.
The thing I would say, Minister, is with respect, like, you're mistaking my questions for criticism of the existence of the program. It's not. I benefited from the program. My own kid, you know what I mean? To be fully transparent, my kid was able to go, my daycare costs were reduced immensely. My questions are not about the existence of the program. It's a great thing that it exists. But I think all Canadians, including your government, should be worried about how much of a success it is. Could it be better? How much better could it be? Is it living up to the promise that your government initially made? And I think key to it, despite its universality, is to make childcare more affordable for the people who really need it. And your government at this time has no discernible data to be able to say that.
Well, actually, we're getting better. And I would say that we, first of all, heard the Auditor General, and that's why the negotiations with Ontario were so fierce, because we wanted that data, because we wanted to be able to quantify exactly what they've done, where they're going, and where the weaknesses are. And if at the announcement today, Minister Calandra talked about that, and he talked about actually the challenges in a system that's not used to that kind of granularity, that's quite fragmented. So his focus over the next year is going to be to make sure that in the next round of negotiations, they will have that data, and that we'll be able to report, he'll be able to report that to the federal government. And as we renegotiate with each province or territory, we'll have the same expectations of them as well. Because quite clearly, in a federation, question, data is challenging, and I've given you a couple of examples. But if we're going to be able to demonstrate to Canadians that programs are fair, that they're equitable, and that they're working, we have to be able to share data more effectively. And so I'm a bit of a policy wonk. I believe that numbers really matter, and I was really thrilled to see Ontario work so hard to get an agreement that includes that rigorous, robust data sharing.